Welcome to episode 12 of the We'll Bring the Popcorn Entertainment Podcast. I'm Brad, this is Josh, and on today's show, we're going to give our thoughts on the first two episodes of X-Men 97, episode 5 of Shogun, and our film review of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire.
Yeah, that's right, and unfortunately, we'll start today's news with another passing in the industry, somebody that's not necessarily as well-known of an actor, but they have a big part to play in the movie-making process, and that is casting director Dianne Crittenden, who was most notably casting director for Star Wars A New Hope. She went through several thousand candidates before finally landing on the magical trio of Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, and Mark Hamill. So obviously one of the best castings of all time. I mean, Star Wars is one of the biggest properties ever, and her passing, I mean, her casting that is changed the game of that type of film. Like, you wouldn't know if that movie would have even been as popular had they casted different people. Could you imagine somebody else playing Han Solo?
Can't look back and see that Luke or Leia or Han was played by someone else. So yeah, she had such a huge impact on Star Wars and with that. So yeah, our condolences to her family. 82 years old. She had a good long life, but it's never great when someone passed away. But she had such an impact just from that one film that she did.
Yeah, and we wanted to show a little bit of love to some of the more unsung heroes in the filmmaking industry. Like, casting directors are super important for these films being successful because they put the ensemble together. And we've seen bad casting decisions. We see unbelievably amazing casting decisions, and these people play a huge part on it. So just wanted to show a little bit of love to Dianne Crittenden for absolutely nailing it on the casting of Star Wars. So condolences to her and her family.
And we unfortunately had another passing with Emmet Wash, which you may not know his name if you Google his name looking up. Once you see his face, you're going to know him. The guy has been in over 220 films. Yeah. He's been in Blade Runner, Knives Out, The Jerk. He was in Home Improvement, and he's been in just about everything. Like, his face, his voice once you see him. He passed away at 88. We want to just offer our condolences to him as well, because he wasn't a big name out there, but you saw him everywhere. You knew his face. You knew who he was, and he did great things with, he was a character actor, a background actor for a lot of the times, wasn't really a leading man in anything, but he was a guy that you just always saw there, and I'll miss seeing him in film. Yeah,
it's one of those, like, it's like you said, you Google the guy's name and, like, the images that pop up, it's one of those, oh yeah, I recognize that guy. Like, I remember him from, insert film here. Like you said, he did over 200 films, so everybody probably knows a different film that he was in, so if you definitely take the time to at least Google his name, check it out, see where you recognize him from, maybe let us know in the comment of the video where you recognize him from as well. So kind of shine a little bit of a light on him and, these character actors that you just see in so much that never really get a chance to star in anything, but play, bit roles in just about everything. Those are important, important actors as well.
Yeah, because once I saw his picture of that he had passed, I'm just jumping back to scenes that I remember him in, movies I remembered him in. Like, yeah, I remember him, and he had a great little role in this and that. But like I said, there's so much he was in. So yeah, leave a comment. Let us know what you may remember him from, and your comments on Diane's passing as well. Do you think anybody else could have played these characters that she cast? Like, she did such a job that has lasted 40 plus years of everyone still obsessed with Star Wars.
Yeah, for sure. Just let us know what you think below. And moving into our news for the week, Spider-Verse is coming out with a short film called The Spider Within. It's coming out on Wednesday, March 27th, only on YouTube though. Yep. So they're putting it directly on YouTube. It's a free short film. It's going to deal with Miles Morales as he experiences a panic attack that forces him to kind of confront the manifestations of his own anxiety. It's kind of like a very specific mental health directed short film with a character that, we both especially know and love, and, the Into the Spider-Verse and Spider-Verse films that we, have praised multiple times here on the show. I'm excited to see this. I don't know how long it's going to be. I didn't really see how long, if you knew any more details about that than I do, but it's definitely something I'm looking forward to seeing.
Yeah, me too. I didn't see what kind of running time. It could just be a couple minutes. It could be 5-10 minutes. A lot of this stuff can vary a lot, but I'm looking forward to it. And it's kind of good timing too, because this week, originally, the last week or this week, was when Beyond the Spider-Verse, the third and final film of the trilogy, was supposed to originally be released. So now we're getting this little short to kind of hold us over. But yeah, I'm excited. I loved both of the Spider-Verse films that have come out so far. So I'm interested to see what they do with this little kind of, like you said, mental health short and see how they handle them. It sounds like a more dramatic little short in that universe.
And Shamik Moore is obviously will play the voice of Miles Morales in this as well, which he has in the first two films. So you're getting that continuation as well, and I'm excited to see the story they tell. You know, we're big proponents of, you know, mental health and talking about things that we're going through, and, you know, just dealing with our own, you know, day-to-day lives and issues, and talking openly with people and people you care about. And, you know, we're big proponents of that as well. So it's definitely something that I'm excited to check out and see what kind of story they do tell about it, because busting down that stigma of talking about your mental well-being is pretty important for both of us. So we're excited
absolutely.
for that.
Yeah, so I'm really interested to see how they handle that. And
Absolutely.
yeah, anxiety, mental health, everything. Be open, talk to those you love about it. And yeah, it should be an interesting little short film to see. Now, in past episodes, we have talked about remakes and reboots and all this stuff, and we got a good pile of that happening this week. Yep. So a new live-action Popeye film was announced to be in the works. So for many may not know, unless you were huge fans of Robin Williams, that he did a live-action Popeye film. The film wasn't great. He was great just because he chews every scene that he's in. So he was over the top and just, I mean, Robin is always great. And so it's interesting to see them bring Popeye back, because a lot of kids last few generations may not really know who Popeye is. So it's curious. That's a property that they're deciding to revisit.
And that's exciting too, because like you said, we'll show our age a little bit, but we grew up watching, you know, older Popeye cartoons and things of that, and it was still relatively popular. And like you said, Robin Williams did make that film back then. You said it wasn't the best film. I don't disagree with that as well. It's very forgettable, but it's exciting to see what they do with that entity now, and I'm more curious as to who they could possibly be considering to play Popeye at this point.
I can't picture it. Have to be maybe a Saturday Night Live alum who does some really good impersonations, but it's not just the voice, it's his look, and, you know, he's got a very specific look to him too. So yeah, it's going to be very interesting to see who ends up filling out that cast.
Yeah, I'm starting to think of casting options for other characters as well, like who would play Bluto as well. that would be fun. Give me Billy Butcher. No, I'm just kidding.
He's in everything.
He's in everything. Carl Urban, put him in it. Why not? But yeah, I don't know what kind of tone they're going to take with it. Is it going to be kind of the more campy comedy style, like a Robin Williams type film, or is it? You don't know. I mean, they're making Winnie the Pooh horror movies at this point, so you just don't know what kind of genre. Is it going to be a horror film? Who knows? Like, the details are a little scarce in that. But the fact that they're putting it together, I'll at least keep an eye on it and see what comes out of it for sure.
Yeah. So another kind of reboot that's in the works is the Neverending Story. This was another item from our childhood. It is very much a cult classic. Yeah. I don't think it was financially huge, but, you know, if you were born in the 80s or 90s, you know the Neverending Story.
Sure.
I haven't shown it to my kids yet because of the horse scene. Like, she's a horse lover. She is an animal lover, and I don't even have to describe that scene anymore. If you've seen Neverending Story, you know exactly what I'm talking about, and probably don't want me to go into more detail because you still have trauma.
Right, like we do.
30, 40 years later. But this one is curious to see them bringing it back. I mean, updated special effects, redo the story in a more touching, dramatic way, but it's also one of those, it's a cult classic. Should we be touching these cult classics?
It's weird to see this whole, because you have this debate that keeps going back and forth of rehashing old stories and making them new again, or coming up with brand new original ideas. There's a lot of these types of stories that are a similar, you know, template, as you will, but it could be told in so many different ways and that work. You know what I mean? Like the hero story that you can tell umpteen thousand different ways, but it follows a very similar pattern and a very similar formula, right? So you have that debate, and like bringing this film in particular back, I love the movie. Like I watched it as a kid. I probably haven't seen it in 20 years, but it's one of those films that if you grew up, like you said in that point, it may not make your list of favorite movies, but it's definitely a film you watch. So curious to see how they kind of update it in, you know, the 2020s as opposed to what it is then. Is it heavy on CGI, like you mentioned? It's going to kind of have to be a little bit. It's a fantasy film, so of course it's gonna lean a little bit heavily on that. But does it take away from the heart and the content of the story that you know you can appreciate that it has? But I don't know. The jury's kind of out on that for me. I would definitely love to see like who's directing, who's starring, what it looks like. Like I have a feeling it could kind of tilt to go either way for me, really.
Yeah, bringing that story to a new generation can be great and fine, but it is, again, same kind of with The Crow, is that you have your memories and you have your thoughts, and so those of us have seen it and, you know, love it as a cult classic from our childhood and stuff, like, there's a little apprehension because you're just not, is it going to just not have the same feel and ruin your memories as you had as a kid, or is it something that they could actually do really good? But yeah, without knowing the director and exactly the route they're going with it, there's still some up in the air because there's so many reboots and remakes and sequels and everything come out, and some have been good, some have been really bad, and you just don't want something that you have such great memories on to be tainted with a bad remake.
And I'm gonna take your point to that, and I'm gonna pivot to the next thing that we wanted to talk about as something that came out, you know, a while back, and something that a lot of people hold in high regard, and that is the fact that Happy Gilmore is getting a sequel. Obviously, Adam Sandler's been under a deal with Netflix for a long time, but one of the films he's going to make on Netflix is apparently going to be Happy Gilmore 2. So it may still come out in theaters, but it looks like it's going to be a Netflix film. Like, I don't know how I feel about this. One, because there's so many different layers to this, right? You have the passing of Carl Weathers that we've touched on. Obviously, Bob Barker has passed as well. And you don't know where they could possibly take this story. Like, in a one-off, it's a great film. It's one that I'll still put on from time to time just because I need a laugh, and I'll put it on, and it's great, and it serves its purpose. But a sequel to that, does it go unfortunately the Dumb and Dumber route? Like some of those 90s comedies that they try to make 20, 30 years later, and it just doesn't work. The comedy doesn't hit the same now as it did then. Like, I don't know. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, because there's this type of films, especially as Adam Sandler blew up with Billy Madison and Happy Gilmore and just everything. They worked for the time period that they came out in. And then that comedy, you know, when we saw it as teens and everything else was, you know, huge. Does that type of humor, does that type of story and everything that they could potentially tell work? So we saw Dumb and Dumber 2 did not work, but they tried too heavily to make lightning strike twice. They did the same jokes. They tried to do the same exact feeling instead of you've got to bring it into the future here a little bit. But like I say, it's been 20, 30 years since that movie came out, so it's quite a while. You know, Shooter and Happy and all of them are going to be much older. What kind of story are we telling? Right. Or do we have a senior tour going on and they're joining the senior tours? Adam's in his 50s now. Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those that if they do it right, it could be a lot of fun, but it's that apprehension from Dumb and Dumber 2 that something made of that era may not necessarily work nowadays.
Yeah, and it's like we say all the time, like we have these feelings about the film, but we're still going to see them. Obviously, Happy Gilmore is one of my comfort comedies that I could put on when, you know, I just need a cheap laugh real quick, or, you know, just having kind of a down day or something, and I'm like, I know this film's gonna make me laugh a little bit. It's one of those very quotable comedy films that you still quote now, but do you say, is it gonna hit the same with the new story, you know, when it comes out in the next, I'm assuming the next year or two probably, because they do have the first draft of the script done at this point, but no timelines as far as when the film's gonna shoot, when it's gonna, you know, come out on Netflix and things like that.
You wouldn't think that's a lengthy shoot to do a movie like that unless they're going big and over the top. It wouldn't take that long to film once they're ready. But yeah, we have no real timeline on when we might possibly see this.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to check it out at least and give it a watch and just kind of roll the dice and hope for the best,
Yeah. But not to like be able to bring another scene with Carl Weathers, even though, you know, his character in the movie passed on, but you still had ways that you could joke with him. Same thing, no more Bob Barker jokes, which is not as relevant anymore, which could he beat up Drew Carey now and keep it all in the Price is Right family.
That is very possible.
And just let him beat up Drew Carey.
It is very possible that's the route they go, as he fights Drew Carey now instead, and he just Happy Gilmore has beef with the Price is Right apparently, but that would actually be.
Yeah, but I hope they do fun with it, because that is one that I remember fondly and something I can turn on to laugh. But those are comedies that are very timely to when the time that came out. And so to be curious to see how that goes going forward. So yet more sequels and things coming out. The Boondock Saints series of films, I think there's already been 3.
Yeah.
There's another one in the works. Norman Reedus and Sean Patrick Flannery are returning for it, but it's another one that, you know, the first one had cult classic status, as we've talked to some of these other films. And do we need to keep going with it? Has it warranted to have 4 films and all of this going on?
Yeah, and those are films that I've enjoyed. I especially enjoyed the first 2. The third one was still solid, but kind of like, okay, I think we've kind of, you know, gotten all the juice that we can get out of this. I'm a little curious to see what a 4th film's going to look like. It's one of those context matters, right? What's the story they're telling? What are the stakes of the story? Who all's going to be involved with it? Obviously, the main 2 you have to have. Like, it's great that they're coming back and doing it, because I do love those films, but it's just another one of those, like, here it comes, like, what are they going to do? Like, the context matters. When you get so far along into something like this, it's so hard to keep, you know, the magic of those, you know, those originals even further beyond. There are some exceptions, obviously, as you get multiple films in. Like, you know, the Harry Potter films I felt got, you know, just as good towards the end as they did in the beginning. But there's so many other cases to where you get to 3 films and it just there's a sharp drop off, and then God forbid you make a 4th. There are very few exceptions where that works. So it's going to be interesting to see where it lands.
It does feel like they're just going to the well one too many times with the series. Like, I never envisioned when I saw the first one that it would have 4 films spread out from the original release through the 2020s, that it's still going.
Right.
So, like I said, if they do a solid job with the story and stuff, then it'd be fun. But it just feels like maybe they're going back one too many times.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Right.
Yeah, we'll check it out. We'll watch it.
Yeah. So moving on to a very popular show right now that's been out for a little bit at this point is the show Peaky Blinders. It's getting a live action film made as well, and Cillian Murphy is returning to, you know, play his role in that film, which is kind of exciting because Peaky Blinders is one of those like super popular TV shows right now. They've got a few seasons in at this point. I personally have only seen the first season. It's one of those I keep meaning to go back to, but with it being on Showtime, it was one of those harder for me to access consistently, but it's one of those shows I want to go back to and watch. But it's very, very popular. So the fact that Cillian Murphy's coming back to play his role in the film, it's pretty exciting news.
Yeah, it's great to see, too, with Cillian that, you know, he's had some great success lately. His star power is rising. Sure. With Oppenheimer winning an Oscar. Yep. And to see sometimes when that happens, they may not want to revisit things that they've been in before. So, you know, he's coming back for the 28 Days Later franchise. He's coming back for Peaky Blinders. So it's good to see that he's still going back to things that helped skyrocket his popularity and, you know, still want to tell stories with those characters. Yeah,
I love that. I wish there were some more actors that were willing to do that. I know we kind of harp on sequels and continuations and coming back to it, but it's exciting. It's exciting to see, you know, him willing to do that at least and take the chance. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure as it comes up.
Now, more than news this week, we got a ton of trailers dropping this week from various different films, TV shows. So we wanted to give a brief time here to have some reactions to, you know, what was released. So the first one up is another long in the running. It's been rumored forever. We finally got it filmed. We got our first look at Beetlejuice, the follow-up to the cult. Again, I'm saying cult classic a lot this episode, but really all these films that we've been talking about are cult classics from the 80s and 90s. And so You got Michael Keaton back as Beetlejuice. Yep. You have Winona Ryder back. You have Catherine O'Hara back. Yep. We saw a funeral scene, which we're thinking that's a patriarch of that family, that he's gone. And what I've loved from the trailer and hearing what Tim Burton talk about it is that he kind of rejuvenated his love for filmmaking, because he went back to a lot of physical props and puppetry and doing a lot of practical effects. And you see a brief glimpse of that with the cracking of the table and everything else. So I'm excited to see it. I loved Beetlejuice, seeing Michael Keaton back. Like, I keep forgetting too, with that man from The Flash and Beetlejuice 2 here, he's 72 years old and he does not look it.
No, not at all. And it's going to be fun. That's going to be one that's got a lot of people talking. It's got a lot of buzz this week for sure. You throw in Jenna Ortega, who's also, very popular right now. She's coming in to play Winona Ryder's daughter in the film, so she's going to have a prominent role in it as well. A lot of excitement coming from the trailer, which not surprising. So I think the movie's going to do very well as well. I hope the story's just as good, because Beetlejuice is a great movie. It was one of Tim Burton's first really big hits, really, and to see him go back to that well and do a continuation, we keep talking about sequels, but it's one that I hope does well as well. And it does seem to have a lot of that buzz this week, because the reaction to it was everywhere. People were finally like, it's one of those you see, like, it's been talked about for years. Are they actually doing it? Or is it just, people trolling on the internet? But they're actually doing it. Maybe that helped get it made. But it's exciting for that. I'm definitely ready to check that one out.
Yeah, this one I feel is going to make a lot of money in theaters. Like, it's going to have all of us who watched it in our youth. My mom is a big fan of the Beetlejuice film. I think it's gonna print money for them. But yeah, I'm really curious to see the story. Like, I feel like they're going to be missing something if they don't start it off with Beetlejuice still in the waiting room, waiting for his long number to be called. Right. And it just starts off with his number finally being called, and he's like pulled in, and you get that, and then you can just kind of go in. But you tie in from the first movie and just let it go, and let that joke, for everyone who knows what that would be about, get that little laugh, and then head into it. But we'll see how it does, but it looks really good.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Another trailer that dropped this week, we've got our first look at Star Wars The Acolyte, which is coming out on Disney Plus later this year. And there's a lot of grittiness in this trailer. It seems like they're telling a story predating, I want to say it's 100 years before the events of...
Yeah, a couple hundred years is back on the this is our first High Republic era show. So
yeah, and you get a lot of that hunting Jedis and a lot of good versus evil battles. The visual effects on it, as they often do with modern Star Wars films, look amazing. I'm excited for the story that they're going to tell, but it's one that I've been waiting to see bits and pieces on, because you hear about it, but it was like, I want that visual representation of what the tone of the story is going to be, and you got a pretty good glimpse of that from the trailer.
Yeah, because it's kind of, as much as we know about the story, other than being set a couple hundred years in the past, it's kind of the rise of the Sith as a Sith kind of coming out, and we're seeing that hunting and that battle for the Jedi. We're getting a Wookiee Jedi. We have one that's going to have a lightsaber whip.
That's awesome.
Which is going to be awesome. So I'm really curious to see how they do it, because, they're kind of getting free reign to maybe do more. We're going to have a ton of Jedi. We're going to have a lot of lightsaber battles. So it's something we really haven't had in a while. Like, we've had the Darksaber in the Mandalorian series, and we've still had it in there in the prequel or the sequel series. But I mean, this is massive amounts of Jedi that we really haven't seen since the prequels.
Yeah, so it's definitely one to look forward to when it comes out this summer, I believe, is when the Acolyte drops. So definitely looking forward to that as well.
Yeah, and another one, which we've heard about it for a long time. I'm glad we finally got the trailer for it, because it looks fantastic, is Alien Romulus. So this is... I'm forgetting where it falls in the storyline, because I think it's before the third. It might be. I think it's after the second film.
I think so too.
But from reading up on it, they've done a lot of stuff practical. The sets are practical. The creatures and the xenomorphs and the face huggers and everything are practical. But it looked horror, which the first Alien. I love Aliens, But the first Alien is one of my favorites because of that dark horror aspect. Because you got more of the action-packed in Aliens. It still had some horror, but it looks like it's going back to that gritty horror of the first Alien. I'm really excited to see it.
Yeah, that trailer was fantastic. I was kind of shocked because they kind of went in a little bit of a different direction with like the Prometheus films and things like that. It was Alien, but it kind of wasn't. Like it was a weird, like they weren't bad films by any stretch, but like it was just a completely different look and feel. And it does feel like they're going back to what made those original films like as popular as they were. And I got really excited. This is personally my favorite trailer that came out this week.
Absolutely.
And that surprised me because when I heard it was like, oh great, they're making another Alien movie, that was my first reaction was, oh great, like what's this gonna look like? But by the trailer, I was like, oh man, like this looks like it's gonna be really good. Like it hyped me up to see this movie like right away. And you know, if you get a chance to check that one out, it's fantastic. Like it looks really cool. I'm very excited for it.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Out of all the trailers that dropped this week, that one had me the most excited because it looks gritty, horror, gory, scary, alien. And I'm like, thank you.
Beautiful. Like
So I'm really looking forward to seeing that. That got me the most excited out of all of them. And I'm hoping if it does well, they get another chance. Because I think originally this was going to either be on streaming. And I think right before filming, they're like, we're putting it out in theaters now.
Love it.
And it looks like he did a fantastic job of bringing Alien back to life. Because we've had a ton of them now.
Yeah.
Between the Prometheus and all those with Alien 3 and other stuff they've done, we've had a lot of Alien movies. So, yeah, going back to what kind of started it all, it really got me excited.
Absolutely. That's definitely one to keep an eye on when it comes out as well. Another trailer that it was pretty cool how they rolled out the trailer for this show is we're big Game of Thrones fans, obviously. So season 2 of House of the Dragon dropped not one but 2 different trailers this week of kind of telling the same story, and it was pretty neat how they laid it out. Brad, you want to go into how they laid out the 2 dynamics of the trailers?
Yeah, so you kind of got from each side. You got Team Green, you got Team Black, and so the trailers told it from their perspective about how each side is going to war, how they're trying to honor what's going on, and how they're both handling the situation, because we got a lot of build up in the first season of House of Dragon where it, ended very dramatically with us getting set for, all right, we're going into war and battle. This season, through these 2 trailers, which I love seeing both perspectives because there are 2 vastly different perspectives, that it looks like this season's going to hit the ground running and just really just go.
Yeah, it's a big battle for the throne, right? As it always is in these types of Game of Thrones stories, but to your point, I was surprised at how much I loved season 1 of this show. Like, it was very well done. It's very dark. It's very dark. Darker in tone than even Game of Thrones was, because there's some very serious subject matter that it touched on, and very violent in a lot of ways. And then there's obviously some of the other, explicit things that happen in these shows that happen in, all the other Game of Thrones seasons as well. But it's cool to like drop the 2 different team dynamics, like, because you have this very clear divide in the kingdom of people following, this family and this group, and then people following this group that feel like they're the rightful heirs to the throne. And it's cool to see each, and I recommend that you watch them both. And then there's like kind of an amalgam of the 2 that's kind of an overall one, but they split it into the 2, and it's kind of neat because you get like a feel for where each side's coming from and what they're doing, like you said. And I'm very excited to see the story that's going to be told. And we finally got a release date of June 16th. So we got the premiere date as well for that. And I'm just chomping at the bit to dive into this one because it's so good. It's always been appointment viewing for me. It's always like watch it Sunday night as soon as the episode drops kind of thing, as Game of Thrones was back when it was on as well. And the fact that this is keeping that like Sunday night at 9 o'clock tradition alive for me it makes me very happy.
Yep. I'm excited to see it. The trailers, we waited a while to get the second season. So to finally get the trailers, get the solid date, we knew it was June. Now we have the date. I'm ready for season 2.
Absolutely.
So a little lighter news story.
Talk about
is that Margot Robbie is going to be producing a live-action The Sims movie. So this is based off of the video game, which, is very, it's a simulation game. You can build your home and neighborhood and go on dates and have friends and families and do a bunch of stuff through the 100,000 expansions and stuff it's had. We have Kate Herron is going to direct it. We don't know if Margot's going to be in it at all, if she's just producing. But it's an interesting property to go after because there's a lot they could do with the story, but, game-wise, it's a little kind of weird to adapt because they don't speak. They have their own language where I'm not even doing it right, but you don't actually understand. It's a mumble speak, and they've got like Katy Perry has performed songs for the game in the Simis or whatever they call the language. It's kind of weird to see if it's going to be like Barbie. Is it going to take them from the game into the real world? We don't really know what kind of story they're going to do with it, but not a lot of people were looking at Barbie in a great light to do, and we see how that did. So it's going to be interesting to see how they handle The Sims in live action. Yeah,
there's definitely one of those games that it's got a very dedicated and devoted following to it. Like, I know there are people that are like obsessed with these games and like put a lot of time into building these, simulated communities and realities and things like that. And I'm curious to see, to your point, what the tone of the film is going to look like. Is Margot Robbie going to be in it? I hope she is, because she's fantastic and, can star in all the good things as far as I'm concerned. But if she's just producing as well, like, she's got a pretty good track record right now for herself, and she's one of those can do no wrong in the moment kind of trajectories of her career. And taking a property like that and adapting it into a film, I'm excited to see what they do with it. And it's gonna be fun to, as we get more details as they develop this film and put it together and get it cast and everything, just what it's going to look like. So
and see what kind of tone they go for, because you would expect it to be more light and silly, kind of like Barbie. Barbie had little, touching moments to it too, because it could be done in the same way that Barbie was, or they're going to go more serious with it. Like, we don't really know, but if they handle it right, it could be a fun property to see.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to checking that out as well. Moving on to a new series that's going to be set in the world of The Office. So we're getting kind of not necessarily a spinoff, but a new show taking place in a similar vein of in that world. So it's going to be, is it going to take place in Scranton, Pennsylvania? I don't know yet, but they're doing a series set in that world. It's going to be produced and put together by Greg Daniels, who did create The Office and, made it one of the most popular TV shows of all time. It's still one of those, I know people now that are like re-binging it for the 15th time that have seen it umpteen amount of times, and it leaves a lot of possibilities open for some of the characters that we love in that world to possibly make an appearance.
Yeah, it comes on Comedy Central 4 or 5 times a week. I'll turn it on when there's nothing else and I just want to chill and relax. I've probably seen the series full through 4 or 5 times now. I think I still love the earlier seasons. The later seasons had its issues and problems, but it's still one of my favorite series of all time. So it's interesting to see that they're going to be doing, a new show with new characters, a new office. Where are they going to set it? I would assume it's going to be set near Scranton if it's not in Scranton, so they could have, or is it going to be in like Philadelphia, so you could have Jim and Pam pop in, or it's going to be curious to see where exactly they set it, so they could potentially have, Stanley or Phyllis or someone, because there's going to be some cameos here and there, but you just not going to have them pop up too often. But it's also, can they have lightning strike twice? Like, the British Office version was, what started it all, and it was great, and people absolutely love it, and same thing with here. But for a third time doing this premise, is it going to have the same kind of weight? You've got Greg Daniels behind it again. Just hope they have the right cast and the right story to bring this back, because it was rumored for a while it was going to be a reboot, or they were going to do a new season, and it kind of settled on that, same universe, new office, new people, bringing the office back that way, which is probably the right way in the end, because I think 19 years ago is when The Office premiered, so it has been quite a while.
Yeah, and it just speaks to the staying power of the show. And you even now have, some of the cast members spinning off and doing like their own podcasts where they're rewatching the show and episode by episode and going through and talking about their experience making it and having former cast members on it. And it's one of those shows that it wasn't one of those bitter divorces that a lot of people like just got tired of making and just didn't want to touch again. But like a lot of the people that are on that show still hold such a high regard for their work on that show and hold a lot of pride in it, and are still willing to, you know, do things and talk about it and just continue to have such positive stories and experiences from their time on the show that it's going to be fun. And like you said, with him feeling that way about the show, the fact that you could see some of these people pop up is going to make for a lot of fun moments in TV for sure. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on.
He is, even look at Brian Baumgartner, who was Kevin. He's been one of the highest paid cameo actors for the last few years. Like, people love Kevin and going. And you've got the Office Ladies podcast. We'll give a little shout out to them. Jenna Fisher and Angela Kinsey is doing, you know, that rewatch and giving behind the scenes of The Office. I've listened to it. It's fantastic. They do a fantastic job of giving you those behind the scene tidbits of how the show was filmed and all that. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they do The Office again now. By the time we see it, it'll be 20 years after the first series premiered.
It's going to be a lot of fun.
Another series that's been off the air for quite a while is Smallville. You know, had a 10-season run on the CW. I absolutely love the series. Michael Rosenbaum recently mentioned that they will be pitching an animated Smallville sequel series to DC when the time feels right. You know, James Gunn is currently filming the new Superman film. He's rebooting and restarting the DCU. So it might not be the best time to bring it up right now, but they are looking to bring that back as a animated sequel series, mentioning the entire main cast would come back, you know, those that haven't passed away or have legal troubles that might keep them from coming back to it. But I would be down for that, to see them reprise roles. I still think Michael Rosenbaum is one of the best Lex Luthors we've ever had in live action. He was just so good in that role. I love Tom Welling as Clark. So to have them all come back 20-something years later in the animated, I think that's about the only way you could go now, because we had Tom show up in Crisis on Infinite Earths in the Arrowverse, and of course a brief little more Clark, less Superman, but I'd love to see them bring those characters back, because it's still one of my favorite series of all time. I went back and rewatched all 10 seasons just last year. And
it's another one of those shows, to your point, like you talk about, like, you know, the Office characters doing so well on Cameo. A lot of these actors that are in Smallville still do convention circuits and still do signings, and they still have like really long lines when they go and do these types of conventions, because we go to a fair amount of them as well. And when you see these actors there, like I saw Tom Welling was at a convention that I was at fairly recently, and he had a line around the room. Like it was crazy. Like those are still super popular shows, and the fact that you can still do those types of stories in an animated realm just by using your voice and not having to go through so much else, that's really cool. And the fact that they could continue on with this story, because it was, to your point, a very popular show. It lasted 10 seasons, so it was a very popular show, and the fact that they're talking about possibly continuing it on there is very exciting. I still need to go back and do a complete watch of the show. I watched bits and pieces of it, but it was on during so many other... I know you give me grief for this every time we talk about it, but it was on simultaneously with so many other things that I was watching that I kind of didn't get a chance to really watch it and appreciate it in real time. And that's definitely one that's always been on my list to kind of go through. It felt kind of daunting to me because there are so many seasons of it to kind of go in and watch it, but it's one that I'll definitely get through eventually for sure.
Yeah. And they did briefly, I haven't read all the comics, they did do a continuation of Smallville in comic form.
Sure.
I haven't read or watched all of it, so I was curious to see if they're going to bring any of those stories into the animated realm, if they're basically adapting the comic books that continued it into it, or if they're going to kind of go their own route. But, you know, seeing him behind it and the cast behind it is good things, as long as they have some good writing and good animation behind it. I'm really excited for it.
Yeah, so obviously DC's got a lot going on with their reboots. One of the films that DC's coming out with later this year is the sequel to The Joker, Joker 2, which is going to star Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. But we got a little bit more info that came out on the movie this week. There's going to be 15 or so cover songs performed in some capacity in this film, so it's definitely leaning heavily into the music part of it, and that left a lot of people confused. Like, is it a full-on musical at this point? Because it's widely acclaimed as a very brilliant original film, like when they made it, and Joaquin Phoenix did such a good job playing that dark, broken, coming into his own, becoming the Joker type character. Like, what is this going to be? Is this going to be like a complete 180, or like what thematically is going to go on in this film.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird twist when you heard that there's going to be a musical and just trying to figure out exactly how they're doing it. The only way I can think of that makes sense to me, and again, they did a brilliant job at the first Joker, so I will absolutely be there to watch it. 100%. But it almost feels like maybe each song is going to be some sort of different mental break that he's going through, and so he's picturing people around him performing these songs that relate to whatever situation he's found himself in or mental stoppage or break that he's going through, and those songs are his mind trying to deal with the trauma or the things that he has happening. But it's going to be interesting to see. Like 15 is a lot of songs to go through in a film, especially if it's a musical. That's going to be most of it, but how that intertwines and the acting and stuff we get between it. Because again, we talked about it. They said it's a $200 million film, more than Dune Part 2, which it still boggles my mind that this film is, because the last one was $60 million, right, jump up to $200 million. What exactly are they doing with these musical numbers that made the budget just explode?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too. I like your take on them going the mental breakdown route, because it could be just a whole of him in Arkham Asylum essentially at this point and just having mental breaks. And obviously, Lady Gaga's playing Harley Quinn in this, and she's initially his doctor and his therapist at that point, and it could just be a whole, like, his infatuation with her and going through this mental break as well, and like the type of story that they tell. That it's very intriguing for that possibility. I'm hoping that that's actually the case. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be kind of the tone of the film. Like, it's going to have its campy musical moments, but it's being told in this greater, like going mentally through, just everything that he's gone through and how he's adjusting to life, in Arkham Asylum at this point. And just whatever story they're going to tell with this it's pretty intriguing, man. I'm excited. I'm also excited that they're keeping a lot of this under wraps, because there's not a whole lot of plot detail being shared as far as like leaks on this film. Like, you've seen a lot of photos of, what they look like on set and things like that, but you're not getting a whole lot of meat as far as where the story's going with the plot. And I appreciate that, because so much you see these films get spoiled as well. They're going to talk about this and he's going to explore this. They haven't really done a ton of that for this film, and that makes me even more excited to see it, just because out of sheer curiosity, when you hear a bunch of musical numbers, you could be either set up for a lot of success if it's told, brilliantly, or it could be an absolute train wreck. You don't know.
Yeah, it's like the photos really didn't show anything. It gives you nothing of the plot. You see how they look, but you don't have like Harley in her typical costume, if we ever will, or that could be a hallucination or something in his mind that we get a look at that. But and we've got some similar looks with her with that pattern to her clothing. But yeah, it's given nothing away. But I'm looking forward to seeing how they do this, because I said the first Joker was such a brilliantly done, psychotic trip of a movie that I'm looking forward to see what they do with the second one. Even though 15 songs, well, let's see how they do. Probably not going to be full songs for everything. The soundtrack might have the full songs, but movie-wise, I would say we get bits and pieces of some songs kind of broken up here and there.
I have a feeling that soundtrack's going to be a smash hit, though. I mean, you've seen what happened with like A Star Is Born when Lady Gaga was in that film and how well that soundtrack did. I have a feeling it's going to be another situation like that where the soundtrack's just going to be a smash. They wouldn't put Lady Gaga in if she's not singing, but are we going to see Joaquin sing? Because we know he can sing from Walk the Line and everything. I don't know if I've heard him outside of Johnny Cash sing. So it's going to be interesting to see if he's also singing. Because, it's a much different voice and a much weirder performance. So we're exactly what we're going to get song-wise out of his performance is going to be really neat to see how he does that. Kind of lastly here, we have Mr. Beast is working with Amazon Prime Video on a new reality show. He's going to have over 1,000 contestants and a $5 million cash prize. Mr. Beast is huge. He's everywhere. He's got into products with his candy bars and everything else. So now to see him doing a reality show with Prime Video and that many contestants with that much money, like, the man is almost unstoppable right now. Where do I sign up?
Mr. Beast.
I would love to volunteer. I would love to volunteer for that. But that sounds insane. Like, what is what is it even going to be about? Like, I can't even talk about it. Like, it's, you know, to your point, he's the most popular YouTuber in the world. The guy prints money at this point, makes money hands over fist. He's notorious. If you don't know who Mr. Beast is, he makes a bunch of these different videos where he challenges people to do a bunch of crazy elaborate things for large sums of money. The guy, to his credit, gives away a ton of money all the time. And to that, his videos get millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of views. Like you said, he's the most popular YouTuber in the world. He's worth well over $1 billion at this point, which is incredible to think about considering he does, you know, YouTube content, and he really, you know, used the platform to just absolutely skyrocket himself to his credit. And he's putting this together. I'm excited to see, you know, what they do with it on Amazon, and just what type of competition is it going to be? Because if you've seen his videos, he does all kinds of crazy stuff. So doing it on that big of a scale with that many people for that much money is going to be wild to see.
But yeah, he recreated the Squid Games for a video and stuff, and he's done a lot of stuff to help clean up the oceans and help, you know, those less fortunate and stuff. So he's used his money for good, and also done crazy videos with his friends where he's given away cars and homes and locked people in rooms and offered them money. So there's a lot of different ways from just the variety of his videos that they could do this competition series.
It could be like a greatest hits thing, or it could be something completely all original, but definitely one to keep an eye on for sure.
Yep.
Before we go into our TV review and film review for this week, it's finally happening. You've probably made it through this far of the video. You're noticing Brad is wearing a different colored shirt than normal. It's got our logo on it. We have merch, finally. We finally got some merch put together. As you can see, Brad's kind of modeling some of that. He's got our limited edition Ghostbusters themed T-shirt that'll be on sale as soon as we drop this show. Our merch store will be live. We have merch with our logo on it. You can also get things like cups, tumblers, coffee mugs, hats, stickers, hoodies, you know, all sorts of different type of merch. We would love for you to check out our store. The link to the store will be in the description of the video if you check it out on video. You can also go to willbringthepopcorn.com, our main site, which will also link you to the store. Any support you could give if you want to get your hands on any of this merch, it's coming soon.
Yeah, and it not only gets you something nice and shiny to wear, but it helps us out, helps us grow, helps us evolve this podcast to offer more. And we also might have a contest coming soon where you could win one of these limited edition shirts along with a movie. So be on the lookout for that contest coming soon too.
Absolutely. So he's wearing the black version of the shirt. We will also have, in this limited edition, you can also get it black, white, and green.
Yep.
So there'll be 3 different color options for that shirt as well. Go check it out. We would appreciate any support you would give for us as that. And we're excited, man. We've been working on this merch for a minute, and it's finally here, and we're so happy that it's out.
Yeah, so these hats and these mugs are something we made just for us, but we do have, you know, a variety of different tumblers and hats and stuff that'll be on there as well. And if there's something that you would want to see, either with our popcorn logo or the full word mark and everything on there, you know, type of clothing that you would love to see to be able to purchase, let us know in the comments. We can work on getting that in the store, and we'll do a few different limited runs here and there depending on the content that's coming out, designs we come up with, and we'll, you know, refresh and update the store every now and then. But we do appreciate any support that you all give us with the merch, and I hope that you enjoy. We've looked through quality and hope that we've put together a good selection of merch that you all would enjoy.
Yeah, the fabric on this looks pretty comfortable, man. It's exciting. We're definitely excited for you to check it out and purchase, and definitely support our show as well, and we can't thank you enough for that.
Yeah. So heading into our TV breakdown, we're starting with X-Men 97. So if you're somehow not familiar, this is a continuation series off of the original X-Men, the animated series that came out in the 90s. Was it 92 through 90, or 93 through 96?
Somewhere in that time.
Early 97.
Yeah, early to mid-90s for sure.
And so we kind of start right off where it ended, and then that first time that we got the revamped intro and just I was hooked. I was done. Like, they dropped 2 episodes for the premiere, and I was just brought right back to our childhood.
Yeah, and to your point, like the running gag for like streaming shows is there's the skip intro button. Don't hit the skip intro button for
Never
this.
skip it.
Never skip the intro for this. That music is so good, and it's an modern uptake of the same intro video and everything. Like, it's got the same theme. The animation's a lot crisper now, which is great, and it's got that music that's so iconic for this. But to get into the story of the show is really good. Like, it's still hitting on some heavy subject matter, and it does get a little political. But the X-Men have always been a little political, and it's keeping that theme. Like you said, it picks up where the animated series left off. So if you've watched the animated series, it does end, and it's been 30 years, so I could spoil it a little bit. It ends with the passing of Charles Xavier, and now they're dealing with the fallout of that, and where do the X-Men go from here? Where are they at in their lives? You know, it's a pickup from that, so you hit the ground running right away, and it's got so much of that charm from the show. A lot of the voice characters are back. The voice actors are back playing these characters again. It's so well to see. The stories are really good, and I'm excited where they're taking the episodes.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Like, the animation is, of course, you know, modern, updated. It's hand-drawn, 3D animated, kind of a mix of both mediums, but it looks fantastic. It sounds great. Yeah, having most of the original voice actors, of course, we've had a few that have passed away. Some have swapped roles because their voice just wasn't matching up to the character anymore because of age. I mean, it's been 30 years since the series and stuff, but to hear those voices, to hear Rogue, to hear Gambit, of course, I think it was Cyclops' actor had passed away, and I think Magneto's actor had passed away.
Yes.
And so you got some, but they're doing a fantastic job of, like, paying homage to those actors by doing sound-alikes. Like, they sound so close to it. But yeah, the stories were, which I had to laugh a little bit. You do have one scene where you've got them, your bad group who are arming themselves up, and it looks like a Mega Man blaster, and I just had to laugh a little bit like that. Like, there's another nod to the 90s in our childhood with doing that. But yeah, we got, as we were excited from the trailer, we got Gambit jumping on Wolverine's back and charging up his claws, and we got a huge optic blast from Cyclops of doing a landing. Beautiful. Like, just all of it, like, just, I loved everything that they gave us, story-wise, animation, just seeing these characters back. You know, the voice actress for Storm felt like she fell right back into it. Like, she was such a memorable voice for me, along with Wolverine and stuff from the original series. Just hearing her speaking again was like, I'm back.
It's like a warm blanket you put on, man. It's so much fun, and there's a lot of heft and weight to this. The things these characters are going through, and it does a good job of mixing in humor and, you know, like some serious subject matter and some heaviness and some stories. One of my favorite moments, and I texted you this before you had watched it, is the scene with Wolverine and Jean Grey, who's pregnant at the time, and she's telling Wolverine, he's coming, and Wolverine is so oblivious. He's like, "Who, Apocalypse?" And she's like, "No, the baby." And he's like, "Oh crap!" So there's like a really funny moment in that made me laugh really hard. But it's got a lot of that charm that the old series has. It's such a brilliant continuation of it. Everything I've seen of it so far has been almost universally positive as far as the reception of the show as well. And I'm excited to see that continue because, to your point, it's one of my favorite cartoons as a kid, and we're getting a continuation of that now as an adult, and I still appreciate it just as much as I did when I was a kid. It hits all the right nostalgia notes. We've talked ad nauseum on this show about, you know, hesitancy for continuations and sequels, but this is one, when they get it right, it hits, and it absolutely hits. They've hit an absolute grand slam on this one, and I'm excited to see where they take the story, because it's one of those cartoons that does linearly tell a story. It's not one of those that kind of jumps around and different weeks are doing different things. It's a linear story that they tell, and it's so much fun to see where they're taking it.
You could tell there was so much love and care taken for this. I think there was a quote from Kevin Feige that he had basically 2 rules for redoing this: get the original voice actors, and we have to have the theme song.
Yeah. And
that was his ground rules. But you could tell that they just took so much care to get the characters right again, to make sure it met. Like, they just did such an incredible job to bring this back. And yeah, I'm really loving what they did in these first 2 episodes, and they left us with a cliffhanger after the second episode of, you know, what could we be dealing with? Because we see a character show up that we're like, okay,
right,
Well, it's because we don't want to spoil anything already. It's only been 2 episodes in this premiere, but it left you with a cliffhanger to see where the rest of the series goes. Because it's only, what, I think 10 episodes or 12 episodes, something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a shorter season. Some of the seasons in the original series were a little shorter too. But I'm excited to see where they go. They put so much care, attention, love, and detail into this that it's brought me back to my childhood. But even as an adult, I'm really enjoying the storytelling that they're doing.
Yeah, they do a good job of running you through all the emotions, right? Because there is the humor, there's the heartbreak even, because one of the characters goes through something absolutely heartbreaking as part of that cliffhanger, like what the future of that character holds. And it's gonna be fun, man. I'm excited, man, because it's gonna be one of those that I know that even when they get through the entire series, I'm gonna binge watch it multiple times for sure. Just full disclosure, it's hitting all the right notes for me.
I would say it was a great use of Morph's power too, because he gave us a look at other characters. So we've got Archangel and, many others that maybe you don't necessarily want to bring voice actors back or use. We don't know if we're going to see them or not, but we got to see a lot of characters come back just from Morph, goofing around and showing up as different people. So that was a great little scene too.
Yeah, it was definitely a thanks for, if you're coming back to this, having loved it when you were younger, here's kind of a gift to you, you know what I mean? Aside from keeping the theme music and stuff, but it's like, okay, if you watch this show like we did, and he goes through and cycles through some of those, you're like, that was great. That was a great moment. It may just be a one-off thing that they don't necessarily visit moving forward, but it was definitely a fun, like, hey, little wink to you if you watch these growing up, just to kind of like, yeah, that was nice. That was good.
Yeah, we can't recommend enough if you're a fan of the 90s X-Men animated series, of Marvel in general. You owe it to yourself to watch this. If you grew up with it, or even if you didn't, I'm going to get my kids into watching it as well. I've shown them some of the original X-Men animated series, but I want to show them this as well. Oh
yeah, it's definitely one to share between generations at this point. So that's X-Men 97, currently out on Disney Plus. You can watch episodes 1 and 2, and I believe episodes drop every Wednesday from here on out.
I think so. Disney keeps mixing it because it used to be Fridays, and I think they've done some on Tuesdays, and so I think it's Wednesdays, but I'm losing track of when they're doing the releases anymore because it can vary from series to series too. Yeah.
And so check it out when you get a chance. Cannot recommend it enough.
Yep.
Moving on to our other show that we've been following since episode 1 that we're absolutely hooked on as well is FX and Hulu's Shogun. We made it through episode 5 now. We're at the midway point of the season, and there's just so much going on in this show, and it's still got its hooks in me, man. Like, this is appointment viewing for me now, and it would be even if we weren't reviewing it on the podcast like we are, but you get the continuation of the fallout that we end with last episode on with the attacking of the troops and, kind of this war getting ready to brew and start, and everybody's kind of posturing for, power and trying to get one up on everybody else and trying to stay ahead of the game. And you get a continuation of that in this episode as well. Like, it's not the most action-packed show, but it's got a lot, episode this week at least. And it's got a lot of meat to the story that they tell this week. There's a lot of heavy stuff that goes on in this episode.
So gripping with the story it tells. So we have Lord Tornaga has returned with an army of thousands of soldiers, but a little bit of spoiler because we've got a character that's returned that we thought had met his end, and that is Buntaro, who is Mariko's husband. They all thought that when they escaped the city that it's always that he disappears. You don't actually see the death. So there's always that potential. Well, we find out that a group of 30 Ronin had helped him escape with only a couple remaining, and he's alive and he's returned with the army, and that adds a brand new big dynamic into this because she thought he was dead. And if we saw in the last episode with John Blackthorne, there's a little bit of a relationship and things building between them, and a little emotions and stuff building between them, and all of a sudden hey, here's his husband, because we also get a very deep dive into the culture.
Sure.
And, women in this culture in the 1600s Japan, and might, still somewhat be around. I can't say I'm too in-depth on knowing what the current culture is with stuff, but, women are kind of possessions. They're kind of belonging to the husband and the household. They have their roles and their parts, and they have to do it. And his return brought us a lot more depth into that, to see his reaction to Mariko and her revealing stories about her family and John's reaction to everything there. And then we get a lot of depth with John here because the way he does things and talks and how he is as an English person, thinking that he's having chivalry and charm and joking, causes a lot of problems in this episode.
Yeah, definitely a lot of friction in it as well. And it goes to show like how literally and how seriously they view life and how they view, honor and respect. And, he gives a very direct, like, he feels like it's kind of a edict to, like, there's this bird that he just leaves hanging, and it just stinks, and they're all trying to get rid of it. But he literally tells them, as the lord of this house, if you touch it, you die.
And, it's kind of, to him, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, trying to get across to him, like, don't touch it, because he thinks if he leaves it out, it's gonna make the meat taste better when he cooks something for Lord Toranaga. But yeah, it's tongue in cheek, but he took it extremely seriously.
Yeah, and you see the fallout of that by the end of the episode, and just the weight. And when he comes to that realization that somebody unfortunately lost their life because they took it upon themselves they couldn't deal with it, the smell of that bird anymore, and they got rid of it. But that meant that because you directly disobeyed the order of the lord of the house, that you have to now end your life. And there's a lot of that thematically built into this show at this point, and honor. And if you lose any of that honor, you have to kind of, the cost of it is your own life. And that's how high of regard they hold these things. And you feel the weight of that. And you see the emotional shift in John at that point when he realizes that he's learning about their culture as well, and he has to kind of be mindful of the things that he says and orders that he gives, because he's technically a prisoner, but he's not a prisoner. He's a prisoner with power, and it's a different dynamic, and it's told so well because you see he does it so much in his face, like his facial features and his mannerisms and the way he emotes, and just you see he gets like the sunken look on his face
before he even says anything. Like, what's going through his head before he even speaks.
Right, and it's such attention to detail that the show just does so well that it hits a lot of the right notes for me and what I like to see in these types of stories. And they just been killing it, man. It's 5 episodes in, and I'm so hooked on this show.
And we got a lot more depth with Mariko because she shared the story about her family and the dishonor that her dad had caused her family, and that she was left alive while everyone else was killed in her family and took their own life or was killed. And she shares it, and like basically she says, with a little bit of spoiler here, that she says she wants to end her life. She wants to be rid of that shame that her family has brought on, but because of how women are treated in this culture and everything, her husband tells her she must live, so she must live. She's not allowed to have her own free will. And she even comments on that with John, that free will is not what you think it is. Like,
right.
And defends kind of, you feel him like being chivalrous. He's trying to, like, you need to live for you. You need to have your life and stand up for yourself and not allow him to do this to you and do all that. And she's like, free will is not what you think it is. And this is the last time we're going to speak because you don't understand. And because you did have a feeling leading up to now that John was getting a little more in touch with him. He's seen a couple things that have opened his eyes. He's learning the language a little bit more. He's had, swords bestowed to him. And he said all this, and he's starting to learn the culture, but clearly he does not understand it well enough.
There's a lot of the intricacies that go into how they live their lives and how they view life, and he still doesn't have that capacity to come to full grips of, everything. And he is learning, he is adapting, but at that point it's such a heavy burden that he's bearing at this point. But at the same time, like, it's not all tragedy and necessarily there's definitely one of the better scenes in the episode isn't that, but it's more of, now you're playing into that interrelational dynamic between Mariko and Buntaro and John Blackthorne, where Buntaro is basically ordered to live at Blackthorne's house with Mariko, and there's this, obviously what happens between Blackthorn and Mariko in the last episode is kind of being forced awkwardly into this situation. And there's a scene at the dinner where they're trying to out macho the other to kind of like assert dominance at this point.
You're drinking sake out of this bowl? Ha, I'm a real man. Giant bowl.
Yeah, and it's some of that absurdity it's pretty humorous, but it's also like very, it leads to, it continues to escalate as they continue to do it, and it kind of culminates with Buntaro with the arrows and Mariko, and just an insane scene that kind of takes place that I won't spoil. You definitely want to see it to watch, but it's intense, and eventually, that does kind of bubble up between them. It leads to a little bit of a battle, if you want to call it that. I don't want to necessarily call it like a full on fight, but they do kind of scuff it up a little bit, and you get a little bit of resolution to that. But it's going to be interesting to see where they move now, because there's these things brewing. Like, you get to the end of the episode, and all along there's these power plays that are going on with the council, and Toranaga's resigned, but they're trying to fix the situation, but they can't until they hire the right person to take that last seat that Toranaga had. And you deal with some of the funny, not funny dynamics of politics now.
It's like, I like this guy. Well, I don't.
Exactly.
I like the other person. I like this guy. Well, I don't. Until it eventually just dissolves the council.
Right. And these guys eventually just start fading away. And then at the end, you get who potentially could be stepping in and kind of just saying, all right, enough's enough. I'm taking over, and you're all going to be, reporting to me, kind of, and sets up what a different dynamic of where the show can go at this point, because it's somebody who you've already kind of seen a little bit in the show, and they're like, nope, it's going to be me. And now you're like, okay, well, one person's been really kind of trying to bring all this together. Are they gonna abide, or are they gonna use each other? Like, what the dynamic of that relationship is gonna be? But it's gonna be fun to watch them explore it.
Especially with how, like we've mentioned, women are treated in that culture with her coming back. Like, are they really going to respect anything that she has to say because of how women normally are treated? Sure. So there's that extra dynamic that, like, we see potentially a new power person coming into play here, but. Absolutely. Is she actually going to get any respect to do any moves or do anything, or is she just going to be a pawn for Ishido's plans that she doesn't know about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's going to be fun to watch it as it unfolds over the next 5 weeks. So we'll continue to review that as well as we move along with this. We're both absolutely hooked on this show. Yeah. I'm so excited for the show to drop every week. I'm still enjoying the Hulu version of it, which I think is the way to go if I were to recommend watching this to anybody. If you can't, it's fine. You can watch the other version that's on FX. But if you can watch the Hulu version, can't recommend that one enough, as we've said here before. Yeah. But the new episodes on that drop every Tuesday on Hulu and FX. So if you get a chance, check out Shogun and catch up with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that episode as well.
Yeah, we can't recommend enough. It's climbing the ladder of some of my favorite shows of all time already, and we're 5 episodes through. Brilliantly done from every aspect, the acting, the music, the set design, just everything. There's nothing out of place in the series. Like, everything is done so well.
Love it.
Moving on to our film review this week, we have Ghostbusters, Frozen Empire. Yep. Of course, this is a sequel to Afterlife, so continuing the story that we started there with the family, with Egon's family, and moving them back to New York now and seeing how that dynamic goes through. And if you look online, the reviews aren't that great for it. It's a little bit mixed, but I had a great time with this.
I did too, and like you said, they're moving to New York now. They're living in the Ghostbuster house. So the Ghostbuster house is the central location for the bulk of the film, right? So they're working out of that. They're working as Ghostbusters in New York, and there's the dynamic with the mayor, which I love, because I believe it's the same mayor from the original movies. A little bit of a spoiler there, but he's still feeling the way he feels about the Ghostbusters and, wanting to shut them down. And there's some of the dynamic of that plays out in the film as well. But to your point, I enjoyed it as well. Like, did it hit all the same nostalgia notes for me that the last film hit? Not as much, but it was a great continuation of that story, I thought. Like, I've really enjoyed the film. It was a lot of fun. It's got a lot of that absurdness, campiness that comes with, watching Ghostbusters, and it hits a lot of those. It hit a lot of those same notes for me, and I got a lot of enjoyment out of the film. I don't understand where a lot of people are having issues with it necessarily, but to be fair, I haven't read a ton of reviews despite it, because I don't, we've said it ad nauseum, people can feel how they want about a film, and we're just giving you our opinion on it, but I had a good time watching it.
Yeah, it was a great mix of kind of what they did in Afterlife. The Afterlife was deeper with the emotional impact and that deeper connection to Egon and that family and stuff, and you got a little more action, a little more joke. Well, I mean, I guess the jokes were mixed.
Sure.
But and I think it had a great dynamic with the past cast of still having them around and involving them just the right amount while allowing the new cast to explore the firehouse and kind of set up their own thing and figure out, all right, how is ghostbusting in 2020s gonna work with how they're destroying and just running through, and you see that great dynamic and stuff, and all the actors do a great job. There were some odd marks. Like I said, it mixes Ghostbusters 1 and 2. It mixes the real Ghostbusters, the animated series and stuff in there, along with Afterlife. So it's a mix of kind of everything they've done within here. Like it wasn't perfect in some ways. I still think, while it was fun, the whole fire bending, well, not fire bending, it's Avatar, but that's all I could think when I was hearing and seeing it. But it was like you're dealing with ghost and supernatural stuff. It fits in, and it was fun done, but it was also kind of odd in there. Like it kind of took you out a little bit just because of it's not the same supernatural that you're used to with Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and the whole Fire Master thing, like you were talking about, if I had to have a gripe about the film, it would probably be just, I think they could have done without that. I mean, it plays a little bit of a part in, like, towards the end of the film, really, but it's one that I don't really feel was necessary to tell the whole story. Like, I get it, they're protectors of these totems that house these super ghosts and whatnot, but it was definitely an element that probably wasn't necessary, but it was still fun. I mean, the actor that plays him is in a lot of stuff that I enjoy as well, and he's got a good sense of humor and brought a little bit of extra comedic touch to the film, but it may not have been completely necessary. But I don't think it necessarily ruined the film for me either. You know what I mean? Like, it was still fun how they incorporated it.
His story was crucial to the film because he's the one that basically, he's a guy that's pawning off of everything of his grandma's, and he ends up pawning off of stuff from her secret room, which are some, more grown-up jokes and stuff made about his secret room. Yeah. But he takes it to Ray to try to sell the supernatural stuff, with one being an orb, and that orb holds Garrick, I believe was the name of the supernatural being that we end up learning more about. And everything up to there was great, but I could have done probably a little less with the whole fire thing. I get fire and ice, and they're trying to mix that in there, bring in a more supernatural in that way from the past and bring forward, but he did look a little ridiculous in the suit and doing the moves and stuff, but it didn't take me out of the film, but I could see gripes with that part of it, and it wasn't my favorite part, but he was fun. That was the thing about it. His character was fun, and he had some good jokes, and he played it well. It was just kind of odd. Yeah. But overall, like, I had a lot of fun. Like, the whole melody, there's a ghost girl that sets up a lot of our story, too, with it. Like, I think they could have done a little bit more with her to give some depth between her and what's going on with, and now I'm blanking on names because I'm so great with names, with the daughter, to be able to give her a little bit of depth, because we see her dealing with some kind of deep, dark stuff as well in this, and that's kind of the core at it that sets a lot of things off. But I would have liked to seen that maybe explore a little bit more to give a little more depth to both of them with their situations that they found themselves in.
Yeah, I mean, you could have probably added another 10-ish minutes to the film, because the film is relatively short. It's under 2 hours.
Yeah, I think like 155, something right under 2 hours.
It's just under 2 hours. So you maybe could have gone an extra 10, 15 minutes and explored that dynamic a little bit more, and that relationship that builds in the film. But it didn't overstay its welcome either, because it didn't drag on. It wasn't, it wasn't just adding things for the sake of adding them as well. And I felt like in that compact form of the film that it did what it needed to do. Now, do they continue beyond this film? It's yet to be seen. Because, I mean, they leave it at a point where it could really go either way. Like, you could continue to tell the story if you wanted to, but it could also be the end if you don't explore it beyond that. Like, it leaves that door open. If it does well, obviously, I'm sure they will make more. And with the film being as popular as it is, that property being as popular as it is, I could see them attempting to make another film. But if they didn't, it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either.
As we know, the first two just had two. Do we only get two of this? Then yeah, it ends, like you said, in a way that we could get sequels, or we could just leave it here and we're perfectly fine kind of where we left it.
Sure.
And I wouldn't mind seeing more, but you don't want it to overstay its welcome too. Like if they do another one, hopefully maybe they wrap it up as a trilogy and kind of leave it there for a little while. Paul, to kind of go back, Paul Rudd was fantastic as usual. He got kind of, as you expect, some of the best one-liners and ripping stuff off from the songs and everything else. But you also got a bit of heart because you are dealing with, from Afterlife, he's introduced to the family, and now him and the mom are dating, and you're seeing that evolution of their family dynamic, because the family dynamic is still pretty heavy and core to the story with it. And I think that was done really well. And as a dad at the end with one of Paul Rudd's reactions to stuff, was like, yep, that's a dad reaction. I get that reaction that you just had right there. Like, yep,
that's the right one.
But overall, I thought it was a fun follow-up. Like, I still probably prefer Afterlife just because it had that great connection to Harold Ramis and, that deeper emotional connection to it. And it, was paying homage to it, while this was like continuing and pulling in bits and pieces, while Afterlife was this, paying its respects to Ghostbusters. This is trying to move forward from all that while keeping the cast in there, which I said they had them just the right amount in it to allow them to have fun, go crazy, and then let the regular cast happen. But I really feel it's worth checking out. Like,
absolutely.
You can see some bad reviews of it. There's one place that gave it a horrible review, less than Madam Web and the 2016 Ghostbusters, which I just don't fathom. Like, everyone has their different opinion on stuff. I just still can't fathom how they rated this lower than Madam Web, because it is so much better than Madam Web ever thought it could be.
I could say with absolute certainty that this film is better than Madam Web. Having done reviews for both of those now on this show, I can say with absolute certainty it is a better film than Madam Web. Don't be swayed by that. I try not to sway people's opinions too much on films, but I could say with 100% objectivity, it's a better film.
If you like Ghostbusters, whether it's from the animated series to the original films to Afterlife, I've even seen some people said they didn't like Afterlife, but they like this one. So, I mean, opinions are definitely going to be varied, because it's very, if you like a little bit of horror, if you like a little bit of action, a little bit of comedy, it has it all, but it may not have enough of one thing for some people to enjoy it. But I thought they did a solid job overall, and it's well worth checking out if you have any interest in Ghostbusters at all. Go check it out in theaters right now.
Yep. And we'd like to hear your thoughts on the film as well. So please leave a comment on the video and leave a comment on our socials as well. Let us know what you thought if you've seen Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. So that now we move forward as we always do. The calendar keeps moving. So what do we have coming up in theaters this week? Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire. So that film is finally coming out as well. We will definitely be checking that out and reviewing it next week as well, but that comes out in theaters this week. It is the next big film on the calendar. We're excited to check that one out for sure.
I'm ready to turn my brain off for that one and just have ridiculous time watching, because it's not going to be like Godzilla -1 that had some depth and drama and everything else to it. This, from all the trailers, it's just going to be ridiculous, over the top. Like, when he puts on that glove, I'm waiting for Kong to just start speaking, like, monsters, roll out. Like,
it felt very Transformers, yes.
Very so I'm just ready to turn my brains off and let my brains, I have multiple brains apparently, turn my brain off and just allow the absurdity to entertain me for a couple hours.
Big brain. Also coming out on streaming this week is The Beautiful Game, which is going to be on Netflix, airing on March 29th on Friday. It is a film about the English homeless football team, sports-related film as well. Definitely one warranting a watch when you get the time.
Yeah, coming out on demand this week to purchase is two films that just came out not too long ago, so very seemingly short theatrical run. So we have Ordinary Angels on March 26th, and Imaginary, which we just reviewed, is already coming out on demand for purchase on March 29th, so you can check out our previous episode to see what we thought about Imaginary.
Yep.
And both of those, I do want to check out Ordinary Angels. Didn't get to see it in theaters, but it has, Kentucky connection for us. And, it has some good actors in it, so I'm interested to check that out. And Imaginary, again, as you'll find in our review of what we felt about it, if it's worth checking out again, go see what we said.
Absolutely.
TV release-wise, we have a couple period piece shows coming out. So we got We Were the Lucky Ones, which is set again in the World War II, I believe. It's coming out on Hulu on March 28th. And then A Gentleman in Moscow, which has Obi-Wan himself in it and his wife. So you have Ewan McGregor starring in this show, which premieres on March 31st, based off of the book. That looks pretty interesting to see what they do with that. Both of these will be out this week, and I'm looking forward to checking them out.
I love Ewan McGregor, so yeah, I'm all for that. That's definitely going to be a good one to watch. But that'll do it this week for another episode of We'll Bring the Popcorn. Coming up next week, we're going to be reviewing episode 3 of X-Men 97 on Disney+. We'll also be reviewing Shogun episode 6, and we will have our review of Godzilla and Kong: The New Empire. So once again, check out our merch. You'll see the link to that in the description of the video. Also go to our website, we'llbringthepopcorn.com. It's got all our social information. Check it out. Leave a comment on any of the subjects we've talked about in this episode as well. And I think we finally might have brought the popcorn in this episode. We keep talking about it, but I think we finally got it. But that'll do it for this week. We will see you next week.